What's up, everybody? You've stepped into the current. Short stories that strike fast and leave a cold echo in your mind long after the sound fades. In the next few minutes, something unseen slips closer. A whisper behind you. A shadow that wasn't there. A thought you swear you didn't think. Don't turn around. Just listen. This is the chilling current.
It was 4:17 a.m. I was awake for no reason, just, staring at the ceiling in the dark.
Right, the worst time to be awake.
Seriously. And then it happened. A deep, metallic groan just rolled across the sky. It wasn't just a sound either. It vibrated through the drywall, through the floorboards, like straight into my chest.
Jeez, that is terrifying.
It really was. It felt like the entire atmosphere was just grinding against itself, and for 10 agonizing seconds, it just held there. And then dead silence. I sat up, my heart is pounding, totally convinced I was losing my mind, until my phone lit up on the nightstand.
Let me guess, someone else heard it.
Yeah, a text from a friend 3 towns over. It just said, "Did you hear that?"
I mean, that visceral terror of the unknown, it's incredibly powerful. Especially when you're caught alone in the dead of night,
Welcome to the debate. What I just described to you isn't fiction. It's the first-hand experience of a witness, one of thousands across dozens of countries who have encountered what the scientific community blandly refers to as, quote, acoustic anomalies.
Right, or if you spend any time online, you know them colloquially as the sky trumpets.
Exactly. We're talking about grinding, metallic howls, sky-shaking hums, and these roars that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere, recorded globally with just chilling consistency. So today, we are putting this entire global mystery on the table.
It's a big one.
It is. We need to examine the core question at its heart. Are these massive sounds simply the result of a poorly understood, totally natural seismic event? Or do the repeating patterns and hidden audio data signify intentional, artificial communication originating from the deep ocean?
It's a fantastic question, honestly, and one that really pushes the boundaries of our accepted geophysical models.
Yeah, and our positions today are distinctly drawn on this one. I am arguing that the perfectly timed intervals and the auto-transcribed language found in the source material strongly indicate an artificial, coordinated origin.
Right. Well, I'm approaching this from the viewpoint of a skeptical professional seismologist. I'll be arguing that natural tectonic forces and, frankly, software glitches fully explain the phenomenon.
Which I totally disagree with, but we'll get there.
Hey, the Earth is far more powerful and strange than we give it credit for. I just believe we don't need to invent some intelligence in the deep sea to explain these events.
Well, look, let me lay out why I think the artificiality argument holds so much water. When you actually dig into the source material, the most striking piece of evidence isn't the sheer deafening volume of the sky trumpets.
What is it then?
It's the uniformity. I mean, if you're listening to this right now, you might be thinking it's just a loud rumble, right? But we have global recordings from entirely different time zones, captured across varying landscapes, cities, deserts, mountains.
Sure.
And yet, audio engineers who confirm these events have shown they share the exact same frequency pattern. We are talking about the identical acoustic rise and the identical acoustic fall.
It is remarkably consistent. I'll give you that.
Right? Because natural sounds, particularly geological ones, are incredibly chaotic. They fracture, they scatter, they morph based on whatever medium they're traveling through. But this acoustic envelope, it arrives absolutely pristine across thousands of miles.
It's definitely anomalous.
It is. And to add to that, we have the testimony of Elias, the whistleblower and former geophysicist from that classified 1990s deep-sea acoustic monitoring project.
Right, the infamous Elias.
Yeah. He revealed that these sounds all triangulate back to specific coordinates in the Pacific Ocean, a deep-sea trench, and there are no islands there, no shipping lanes, no human infrastructure whatsoever.
Just open water.
Exactly. And Elias states quite plainly that these acoustic events repeat in perfect mathematical intervals. He notes rather chillingly that earthquakes don't repeat in perfect intervals.
Well,
So the coordination of this acoustic envelope
paired with that kind of mathematical regularity, I mean, it demands an explanation that includes intentionality.
It is certainly a captivating narrative. And look, as someone who studies earth sciences, I always try to approach these mysteries with deep intellectual humility. I mean, our oceans are vastly underexplored.
That's an understatement.
Truly, we know more about the surface of Mars than the bottom of our own trenches. However, I firmly maintain that there is a robust, natural seismic explanation here.
Okay, let's hear it.
So in the source material, the audio engineer who actually analyzed these global recordings made a critical observation. The frequency matches something called T waves.
The tertiary waves?
Now, for the mystery enthusiasts listening who maybe don't spend their lives studying marine seismology, T waves are acoustic waves that travel through the ocean's SOFAR channel.
SOFAR stands for sound fixing and ranging, right?
Yes, exactly. It's this horizontal layer of water deep in the ocean where the speed of sound is actually at its absolute minimum.
And why is that important? Like, why does the minimum speed matter?
This is where the physics get fascinating. So the speed of sound in water is dictated by temperature and pressure. Near the surface, the water is warm, which makes sound travel faster.
Okay.
Deep down, the pressure is immense, which also makes sound travel faster. But right in the middle, usually around 1,000 meters down, there's a sweet spot.
Like a middle layer?
Right. The temperature has dropped, but the pressure hasn't maxed out yet. And because waves naturally refract or bend toward regions where they travel slower, any sound generated in this channel is continuously bent back into the middle.
Oh, so it gets trapped.
Exactly. It acts like a massive fiber optic cable for sound. Because of the thermodynamics of this layer, acoustic waves from a tectonic event can travel thousands of miles through the ocean with almost zero loss of energy.
Okay, so this sound travels efficiently underwater. I get that. But people are hearing this in the sky.
Right. So when these massive trapped acoustic waves finally hit a continental shelf or like an underwater mountain range, they undergo what's called acoustic to seismic coupling.
Which means what exactly?
They crash into the rock, convert back into seismic energy, vibrate the landmass, and essentially use the entire crust of the Earth as a speaker cone.
Wow.
Yeah, it transfers that immense energy straight into the atmosphere. This is exactly how you produce exactly the kind of directional, sky-shaking hum described by the witnesses.
So you're saying the trench is just amplifying it?
Exactly. I suggest that the deep sea trench is simply acting as a naturally occurring acoustic chamber, amplifying shifting tectonic plates. The physics of T waves and the SOFAR channel perfectly explain the how of this phenomenon without needing to hypothesize, an artificial engineer down in the dark.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Let's accept the mechanics of the SOFAR channel as the delivery mechanism.
Okay.
That fiber optic cable analogy is great for explaining how the sound travels so far without losing energy. But my issue is with the source of the emission itself.
Right.
Think of it this way. If you drop a boulder in a lake, the splash is entirely natural. The ripples travel outward naturally. But if you drop boulders into the lake at the exact same frequency, producing identical rise and fall sound patterns across dozens of countries simultaneously,
You're implying coordination.
it definitely implies coordination. It's like finding a perfectly cut diamond in a gravel pit. I mean, sure, geological pressure makes diamonds naturally, but geology doesn't facet them into perfect symmetrical cuts.
Well, tectonic shifts are massive.
But they're metaseed. Rocks shatter, they slip irregularly, they grind violently. To produce an identical frequency envelope that arrives globally as a coordinated 10-second metallic groan, that requires a uniformity at the origin point that simply does not exist in random plate tectonics.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the sheer scale of the forces we are actually dealing with here?
What do you mean?
We aren't just talking about rocks rubbing together. We are talking about thousands of megatons of kinetic energy trapped in a subduction zone. When that much energy releases, it doesn't just create a chaotic crunch. It creates acoustic gravity waves that are massive enough to couple with the atmosphere.
But what about the uniformity, the identical rise and fall?
That could simply be the resonant frequency of the trench itself.
Resonant frequency in this context? How does that work?
Think about blowing across the top of a glass bottle.
Okay.
The breath you exhale is chaotic. It's unstructured, turbulent air. But the sound produced by the bottle is a perfect, uniform tone. Why? Because the physical geometry of the bottle organizes that chaotic air into a highly specific frequency.
So the trench is the bottle.
Exactly. The deep-sea trench in the Pacific is the bottle. The chaotic, violent tectonic shift is the breath. The geography of the seafloor filters out the noise and only lets a specific acoustic envelope escape into the SOFAR channel.
I get the analogy, but
And furthermore, I really have to urge immense caution in blindly trusting Elias, a nameless whistleblower. In rigorous science, we cannot elevate dramatic, unverified claims over fundamental seismology just because it makes for a better mystery.
That's an interesting point, though I would definitely frame it differently. I don't believe we're elevating unverified claims over science at all. We are utilizing the data Elias provided because it maps perfectly onto the observable phenomenon we are all experiencing.
I just worry about the reliability.
Fair. But if we look at the historical timeline provided in that data, I find it entirely inconsistent with your bottle analogy.
How so?
Because a glass bottle doesn't suddenly change its tune and start screaming at you.
Well, true.
According to the classified data monitoring the specific trench, this hasn't been a constant uniform humming over the years. The source material reveals that since 1978, hydrophone sensors have picked up faint rhythmic pulses every few years.
Right, the 1978 data.
Yeah, there was a deliberate, measured cadence to it. But more importantly, there has been a recent, terrifying escalation. The recent event that the witnesses experienced wasn't distant or faint, it was deafening.
It was certainly loud.
It rattled windows, it set off car alarms, it terrified animals, and it lasted nearly a full minute before suddenly stopping. Elias points to this historical progression and calls it a countdown.
A countdown?
Yes. He argues that something down there is intentionally trying to come up. The progression from measured, faint rhythmic pulses over decades to a massive, sustained, global sky trumpet event demonstrates a developmental curve. It shows intent.
I come at it from a different way. I think you are looking at a progression of intensity and immediately and understandably assigning human-like intentionality to it. You're calling it a countdown.
Because it acts like one.
But an escalation in frequency and volume is exactly what we expect from cyclical pressure building in a geological system.
But why the perfect intervals?
Because tectonic stress in a deep-sea trench accumulates over decades in predictable ways based on the speed of continental drift. The fault line catches on aspirations.
Aspirations?
Yeah, these rough, locked patches of rock. The stress builds, and occasionally one of these patches snaps, releasing those smaller, rhythmic pulses we've tracked since 1978. It's an elasticity issue.
Okay, so it snaps occasionally.
Right. As the stress reaches the absolute physical limits of the rock's tensile strength, the snapping becomes more frequent. The acoustic emissions become violent, and they become prolonged.
I still don't see how that disproves a countdown.
Let me offer a counterpoint. Think about a volcano. A volcano mumbles louder and more frequently right before a major eruption, right?
Yeah, sure.
The localized earthquakes become more intense. The volcano isn't warning the villagers. It isn't consciously counting down with intent. It is simply reaching critical geological mass.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
The escalation you described from 1978 to today doesn't necessitate a countdown. It merely necessitates a fault line preparing for a massive, entirely natural, and potentially catastrophic rupture.
I get the volcano analogy, I really do. But if it were simply a fault line preparing for a rupture, the sound would ultimately just be a byproduct of stress. Random noise filtered through water.
Yes, which is what I'm arguing.
But the source material provides a piece of evidence that I think blows the natural noise theory completely out of the water. The sound isn't just noise, it's speech.
Ah. Yeah, I have been wondering how we were going to tackle this part of the material.
We can't ignore it. It is the absolute crux of the artificiality argument. When the audio file provided by Elias was slowed down by the engineers, the acoustic profile changed entirely.
It pitch shifted.
Right. It no longer sounded like a trumpet or a metallic groan echoing in the sky. It sounded like a voice. And when they processed that slowed down audio through advanced auto transcription software, the software explicitly translated the repeating phrase to "We are rising."
And this is where the mystery really grabs people.
Because it should. I mean, auto transcription software doesn't run on magic. It runs on highly rigorous phonetic parameters.
Well,
If you're listening and wondering how this software works, it analyzes things called formants, the specific acoustic resonances of the human vocal tract. It looks for vowels, it looks for hard consonants, it measures the exact microsecond spacing between syllables to construct text.
that is how it's supposed to work, yes.
Right. For an algorithm to take a sound, process it, and output a coherent, grammatically correct phrase in English, the underlying acoustic data must possess the structural hallmarks of human language. You don't just get, "We are rising from rocks rubbing together."
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. What you are describing is the digital equivalent of pareidolia.
Pareidolia? Seeing faces in the clouds?
Exactly. Pareidolia is a psychological phenomenon where the human brain forces a recognizable pattern onto random, chaotic stimuli. It's why we see a man in the moon or, a face burned into a piece of toast.
Right, I know what it is, but this is a computer, not a human brain.
But here's the crucial part. Natural language processing algorithms like the transcription software used here are designed with an identical built-in bias. They are fundamentally engineered to force pattern recognition at all costs.
Even when there's no pattern?
Yes, they use something called hidden Markov models, which essentially look at chunks of audio, calculate probabilities, and forcefully map those chunks to the closest human phoneme in their dictionary.
But it still has to match the audio closely enough to make a word.
Not exactly. If you feed an auto transcription software a file full of distorted, metallic, grinding groans, it doesn't have the capacity to shrug its digital shoulders and say, "Hey, this is just tectonic noise."
So it just invents words?
Basically, its entire programmed imperative is to search the acoustic chaos for anything remotely resembling a syllable. A long, drawn-out scrape of basaltic rock might trigger the algorithm's parameters for an S sound. A low-frequency rumble might trigger a WA sound.
Okay, I see where you're going.
It chops the static up, finds the closest match, and guesses at human language. You are feeding absolute acoustic chaos into a machine perfectly built to invent order out of nothing, and you are treating the algorithm's invention as a profound discovery.
I wouldn't call it an invention.
Handing a calculator a painting and asking it to solve for X will just result in it spitting out numbers based on the brushstrokes. It doesn't mean the painting is a math equation.
Look, I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you are completely ignoring the statistical probability of the specific output.
How so?
I am not debating how the software works. I completely acknowledge that an algorithm might hallucinate words when fed static. It might spit out apple or car or just a string of disconnected, nonsensical gibberish.
Right.
But think about the context for a second. Out of millions of possible random phonetic outputs, the software produced the phrase, "We are rising."
It's spooky, sure.
It's more than spooky. It's a phrase that perfectly, seamlessly aligns with a phenomenon originating from the depths of an ocean trench, escalating in intensity, and culminating in a deafening global event.
I understand the connection you're making.
The statistical probability of an algorithm hallucinating a contextually flawless, grammatically correct phrase out of random tectonic noise is incredibly low. The software required the specific acoustic architecture of those words to output that text. It didn't just guess right out of a million choices.
It is certainly an eerie coincidence, and I won't deny the chill it gives a listener when they hear that detail. But we have to look deeper at how these algorithms utilize predictive text and contextual weighting.
Contextual weighting?
Yeah. If the audio engineer or whoever ran the transcription software on that computer had previously been searching for terms related to the ocean, or trenches, or escalating events, The software's localized caching could heavily bias the output.
So the software just knew what he wanted to see?
Modern transcription tools use contextual language models. If it thinks it's processing a scientific or marine file, it weights marine-adjacent words higher.
So you think the computer just wanted to say rising?
I think it was highly primed to, yes. Furthermore, let's look at the phrase itself. We are rising. Phonetically, it is composed entirely of very soft, continuous sounds.
Like the W and the R.
Exactly. The W in we, the elongated R in R, the S and the ing in rising. These are exactly the kinds of continuous, low-frequency acoustic artifacts produced by water rushing violently through a narrowing geological fissure, or like the prolonged, agonizing scrape of two tectonic plates. It's a fascinating digital artifact, I admit, but leaning on a known algorithmic glitch as your primary proof of a sentient deep-sea intelligence is frankly a bridge too far for the scientific method.
That's a fair challenge regarding the software's bias. I'll give you that. But if we strip away the algorithm entirely, we still have the human ear.
The most biased instrument of all.
Maybe, but the source material explicitly emphasizes that when the file was slowed down, the listener themselves felt their stomach twist because it sounded like a voice. It ceased to be a groan and became distinctly biological, or at least vocal. We have an instinct for these things.
I mean, we also have an instinct to be afraid of the dark, right? But that doesn't mean monsters are real.
True, but when you step back and look at the whole picture, when you combine the subjective human perception of a voice, the objective algorithmic translation of a contextually perfect phrase, the mathematical perfection of the repeating interval since 1978,
That's a lot of separate pieces.
and the exactness of the global acoustic envelope delivered via T-waves, the sheer weight of these overlapping anomalies makes the natural seismic explanation feel incredibly insufficient. It honestly feels like we are twisting the data to fit a comforting narrative.
A comforting narrative?
Yeah, I mean, it is far more comforting to tell people, don't worry, it's just rocks, than to admit the perfect intervals indicate coordinated, intentional activity.
Comfort has absolutely nothing to do with it. It is about Occam's razor. The simplest explanation that fits all the facts is usually the correct one.
If it fits all the facts.
We know for an absolute fact that the deep ocean trenches contain the most violent, massive, and poorly understood tectonic forces on our planet. We know that T-waves can travel globally through the SOFAR channel and couple with the continental shelf to create sky-shaking acoustics.
Yes, we agree on that part.
We also know that fault lines build stress over decades, resulting in escalating cycles of pressure release, just like the 1978 timeline. And we know that software designed to find language will aggressively find language wherever it can.
Which I still think is a stretch in this context. My perspective is just that we do not need to invent an entirely new, unproven entity or artificial presence to explain these sounds. The Earth itself, governed by the laws of physics, is entirely capable of producing terrifying, globally synchronized phenomena all on its own.
It is a profound debate, and I think it's worth stepping back to look at where we both stand in light of this discussion.
Agreed. My stance remains that the identical global frequency patterns point to a coordinated origin. When you add the perfect intervals of the pulses monitored since 1978 and the chillingly coherent transcription of "We are rising," the evidence strongly suggests an artificial, intentional presence in the trench. The sounds are not random geology. They are engineered communication.
And my view remains grounded in the geophysical realities. The fundamental principles of marine seismology offer a rigorous, evidence-based framework for this entire phenomenon.
The T-waves.
Yes, T-waves traveling through the SOFR channel perfectly explain the global reach. Cyclical geological pressure releases building over decades in a subduction zone explain the 1978 timeline and the recent escalation in volume without needing a countdown.
And the translation?
Algorithmic pareidolia and predictive text biases account for the transcription anomaly. We have a robust explanation without needing to invent a deep-sea intelligence.
Well, while we obviously diverge wildly on the origin of the sound, there is a clear point of convergence between us today.
I would hope so.
We both entirely agree that the world's deep-sea trenches contain massive, unmapped forces.
Absolutely.
Whether those forces are tectonic plates building toward an unprecedented catastrophic rupture or an artificial presence initiating a countdown, the trenches are capable of generating profound global phenomena that humanity right now simply does not fully understand.
I couldn't agree more. The deep ocean is, in many ways, more alien and less understood than the cosmos. The forces down there are staggering, and they really remind us of how small we actually are.
I think there is immense value in examining this mystery through multiple lenses. If you're listening to this and wondering what to believe, looking at the phenomenon through the terrified eyes of a frightened witness captures the emotional and instinctual weight of the event.
It definitely gives it gravity.
But examining it through the lens of a skeptical seismologist forces us to rigorously test our assumptions against the laws of physics. Both perspectives deepen our appreciation of just how bizarre and powerful these acoustic anomalies truly are.
I agree entirely. Rigorous challenge is the only way we sharpen our understanding of the natural world. Ideas have to be tested.
We will not declare a definitive winner today. Instead, we encourage you to dig into the source material yourself. Examine the 1978 interval data.
Look into how T-waves operate.
And if you dare, listen to the slowed down audio files to form your own conclusions about what might be waiting in the dark. There is far more to explore in this material than we could ever cover in one sitting.
There really is.
But as you do, consider this. Imagine it's 4:17 a.m. The sky shakes with a metallic groan, and when the 10 seconds of noise finally fade, you are left wondering what comes next in the silence.